Recently, I pointed out online that scientific sort of truth as we know it is often very difficult to sort of understand. It's not clear often, and there's often a lot of pluralistic understandings and perspective from many different people using different perspectives that make it just challenging to know what is a single true answer. And there's all sorts of ways in terms of, whether you're using qualitative methods, for example, whether you use um, different assumptions, whether you're using critical theory, whether, all sorts of different perspectives that make it very difficult to come up with a single truth. And, this is one of the things that is often deeply embedded within sort of mainstream ideas of what scientific science is about is that there is some sort of truth, and then we're adding up facts. Um, I'm putting them into a kind of a bucket of facts of, these are all of the sort of truths of the world. And one of the things that I didn't realize is how controversial that actually was to say that we can have a pluralistic understanding of many different angles. Now I kind of take a perspective, at least in my own views, and everybody is, you know, entitled to their own views. They're all different. I kind of use like a bit of a weighted average, I guess, of all of these things in terms of my interpretation of what the world actually is. It's sort of like maybe it's a Bayesian updating model. I don't know, whatever you would call it. But basically, you would take all these different perspectives, consolidate it in the sense in my brain in sort of a bunch of different weighted averages, and then you would come up with some sort of conception of what the world actually is. But that conception is often very muddled and mixed, and it's challenging. It doesn't fit often within a domain. Um, it's hard to take some of the stuff that people have studied in the past and apply it to new areas. It's not always clear in terms of what you're supposed to do. But my sort of point with all of this is that it's very challenging to assume that there actually is an external, world that's outside of what we are. And that makes it very, very difficult to come up with kind of unifying laws. I think for the most part, at least in much of and I'm really not novice at all of this. And that's why I was just like really taken back, very much a novice with all of this. I don't know. I haven't read enough to see that whether there's like new laws, scientific laws are popping up. I think people really shy away from all of that at this moment because there's all these nuanced ways to look at things that make it very difficult to understand our world. Uh, and I think like if you're in it, you kind of have a sense that, I wish that it would be so much easier if it was clear, right? Like it would be so much more easier if there was one true answer, but there's often not. And there's lots of caveats and there's different ways to look at things. Like even if you have one true answer and it's actually the truth, it's going to operate differently in many different conditions. And it's also going to look different based on how you're actually measuring it and what you're looking at. It's a very, very complicated problem that people have struggled with for years in terms of, is this actually what we should be doing, right? I think that it's always an active debate, I think, in most people's eyes. But I just didn't realize it was that controversial that, and do I think that there are like an external reality? I honestly don't know. And I can't prove that, right? Like I think that's sort of very challenging for me and anybody to prove. That's sort of from many years ago, right? Like when people were thinking about this, that's really what they were thinking about was like, how do we prove that this thing exists, and realizing it's very difficult to sort of prove that, we sort of defaulted to saying, well, the best case scenario is to say that it's the opposite, or the unresult, the null result doesn't exist. And it is really challenging to think about this. I still struggle with it for years and years and years. But that's kind of what we defaulted to because there's sort of complexity of all of that. Um, but I even think now that acknowledging, you know, pluralism is become a challenging debate in the sense that some people have leveraged that to, and I don't think it's any different today than it ever has been, but leveraged it to sort of move it in their advantage, a sort of pluralism that it is, there's always somebody that's trying to sort of interject doubt and all of this kind of stuff. And I, I mean, for a lot of us, that is healthy to doubt, but it's challenging in modern society because we don't really have a good sense of, what is too much. We don't have a good sense of, am I being, silly here? Like, it's just like, as a human being, it's very difficult to sort of pursue these things. But I think the only thing, so what I'm getting at, long story short, I think the only thing that we could do, I think the defining feature of much of what we do in scientific work and scientific research is just about rigor and examining things in many different ways to the best of our ability. And we know that we're always imperfect. There's not a great way of doing it, but it is finding the right amount of rigor that is optimal. Is very difficult, right? Like sometimes people spend, their whole life pursuing something. Is that too rigorous? Probably. But I don't know, right? It depends on the question, it depends on what you're actually looking at. But then on the, on the other side, um, if it's too not rigorous enough and it's like sort of journal art or like not journal, but journalism, which some of it's extraordinarily rigorous today and very well done. But, is that enough? I don't know, right? And that's where I wish that there was easy answers. I really do. I struggle with this every day in terms of thinking about it. I default to a very pluralistic view, but it may not be the right view in terms of maybe there actually are these hard truths that exist, and maybe we should pursue them. I just don't know, and I wish it did because it would be a lot easier and be a lot less contentious. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day.